we have a huge opportunity in front of us to not waste so much resource and carbon.
This commercial scale prove out of this technology, it's enabling a whole new stream of recycling.
We are revolutionizing recycling because we are taking things back to the molecular level.
We're targeting the hard-to-recycle waste. With new processes, waste can be seen as raw material with value. We're showing the world that we can do it.
Good afternoon. My name is Eric De Hoek. I'm the Managing Director for Eastman Chemical Solution, Eastman Circular Solution. I'm very happy to be with you here today. Actually, I've been very interested by all the conferences that we've listened to this morning. I think it shows how challenging is the circular economy and what it takes to really create this circular economy. The previous speaker was mentioning a quote from Forrest Gump about what it takes somewhat to make it circular. You know, when I read this quote, I thought about the quote from Steve Jobs, who was saying that every rational people would give up, right? Because it is really hard to create a true circular economy. So I guess, I don't know if I'm facing a lot of rational people in front of me right now, but at least I'm going to try to share with you some convictions about what it takes to be competitive in a circular economy. First of all, let's start by introducing eventually a little bit Eastman. I don't know how much you're familiar with it. I'll go quickly through that. We are almost a 100 years old company. George Eastman actually is this guy who founded Kodak. And I think that when I see you, most of the people here still remember the name of Kodak, the famous famous film company. And in 1920, he founded Eastman with his own name in order to be able to produce the film that was in the camera. So we are a 100 years old company, and it turns out that we are doing everyday innovation on materials in order to bring a better life. Isn't it a great purpose? And we really do believe in what we do, and we think that, to some extent, plastic, is essential in so many applications. We can see that in hydration. I don't know how many bottles of PET is going to be consumed during the next 2 days, but it's probably a very large number of bottles. We think it's also essential to feed. As you all know, we can see that every day in our daily life. And probably most importantly, it is also essential in the Medicare space, to care. I don't know if you've been recently in a surgery room, but when you go there, you clearly see that lots of materials need to have a certain level of quality, and we are producing those materials in order to care about the people. But even if we know that plastic is essential in so many applications, we also know that we are facing some challenges. Because there are so many wastes created around plastic that we find in the environment. So many steel plastic who is incinerated today. And that's a huge challenge that we are facing as an industry, as a global value chain. And we know that plastic is not ideal. It's essential for so many good applications, but it's not ideal as well. And we need to find ways to overcome those challenges. And we also know that there is no perfect solution. Glass is not perfect as well, metal is not perfect as well, wood is not perfect as well. So I think our challenge for us, for our generation, is to try to find the best material for the best application and try to make it as circular as possible. And this is the journey on which Eastman has really decided to commit. Closing the loop is therefore critical. When we do focus on plastic, I guess you all know those figures, but when we look at the overall production of plastic in the world, today we can consider that there is less than 10% of this plastic which is actually recycled. And I think you would agree to join me to say that it is far too below, it is far too low, and we should do much better in recycling plastic. The rest of the 90% is going into landfill, incineration, sometimes in the nature. We don't want that in the future. We want us at Eastman to create as circular solution as possible. If we now focus a little bit more on Europe and on PET, some figures again, we know that roughly around 50%, 50%, 55% of PET bottles are today recycled in Europe, 20% of trays. If we are looking at the overall plastic included in packaging, it's probably around 30 to 40% that is actually recycled. And if we look only in textile, outside of the packaging, it is around 10%, which is actually recycled today in Europe. So we can see how big is the challenge that we're facing, and the fact that we really have an amazing mission to try to really develop this circular economy and make it more circular. At Eastman, we have decided to address this challenge. And I was talking to you in the introduction about, how Eastman was founded. It turns out that in the 70s, Eastman looked at all the production of the film for the camera, because it was producing that for Kodak once again. And they say, why don't we try to recycle the film? Because in the film, there is not only the cellulosic, which is inside the film, which is the support of the film, but there is also the silver, which is inside the film. So they developed a process at the time, which was designed in order to recycle film, in order to recover the metal that was inside this film. And it turns out that a few years ago, when we look back at the portfolio of knowledge, the portfolio of technology that we have, we've realized that this same process could apply to PET and could be used to recycle PET and to bring back hard to recycle PET back to food grade. And this is what we want to do, and this is why we are investing so much in Europe and elsewhere. So our promise is what? Is to take, hard to recycle PET, the color bottle, the opaque bottle, trays, textile as well, to go back to the monomer, so to go back to the elementary block, to purify it, and to rebuild the block, and to produce virgin-like, in terms of quality, PET. This is what we can do with the technology that Eastman has developed. And this is the technology we want to use in order to create this circular economy. By doing that, we believe, actually, that we are bringing something new to the market, something new to the circular economy, because we are addressing today a feedstock which is untapped. Today, in reality, most of this, what we call hard-to-recycle PET, is going to landfill or incineration. It's not mechanically recycled yet, or sometimes it is downcycled. What we believe is that we can address that feedstock and bring it back to the quality of a food grade, a sensitive grade. So we are complementary, in a sense, to what is already existing. We can provide a virgin quality type of PET, and we can also address new application by doing that. We can take plastic PET, which is coming from trays, from color bottle. We process it, we go back to the monomer block, and then we can produce a PET which is going to go back into the medical field, for instance, which is, the highest level of standard you want to have. We've developed some key principles in order to guide our journey. Of course, we are 100% in favor of the reduce, reuse, and recycle concept. But we also know that any circular economy has to be profitable. The economical piece of the circular economy is critical. And we think that, just to name 3 of them, transparency is also critical. It's very important to be able to prove the traceability of the feedstock that is used by us or by any other players. So, everything is fine, right? We have the technology, we have the feedstock, we have the knowledge to do that. But nevertheless, I think that something is not clearly working today. If we look a little bit at what you can see in the news, right now, in Europe, something is not working in this circular economy. Despite the fact that we have all the willingness to do that, despite the fact that we have the technology, actually, to do that, it's not a technological problem. And as we can see many times in history, sometimes the moral progress is slower than the technological progress. But something is not working. And why do I say that? If you look, any press release from the industry, if you are part of the presentation since this morning here in this stage, or if you go through the booth, you can see, I guess, this is my perception, that this industry is suffering. 3 weeks ago, I was reading a press article from, I think it was the Dutch government, who was mentioning that in the past 6 months, here in this country, 11 companies filed bankruptcy because they could not make it, and they could continue developing their business being mechanical recyclers in that case. So, and it looked like a bit strange, actually, to be facing that situation, because at the same time, the SUPD phase 1 came into force January 1st, 25, which is 3 months ago. At the same time, what do we see? We see an industry in Europe which is struggling. If we look at the news, you will see that so many projects, so many investments projects are either cancelled or delayed. As far as Eastman is concerned, we stay focused. We want to build that plant in Europe. We want to build that plant in France. But we know that so many projects are right now cancelled or postponed. We know also that so many companies are decreasing capacities, are closing down. We see that every day in the press release. We also see, by the way, that the production of virgin in Europe is decreasing as well. It's not only about recycling PET, it's also about producing PET, which is walking away from Europe. So what's going on? Because it's look a little bit counterintuitive to say, hey, we put in place a regulation in order to favor the fact that we want to have recycled content in bottles right now and in 2030 in any packaging. But at the same time, the capacity in Europe for virgin and also actually for recycled PET is decreasing. Something is not working fine. We can see also, and the data are public, that the level of imports coming from outside of EU, what I call imports outside of EU, are increasing. So it means that at the same time that the inner capacity in Europe are decreasing, there is a demand for more imports. Why that? Because when we do that, I think it looks like an evidence that we are increasing the carbon footprint. Actually, by doing that, in reality, we are in a situation where we are going to, if we continue down that journey, I think we will be soon in a situation where we won't be able to treat our own waste, we won't be able to recycle our own waste in Europe, and we'll be in a situation where we are going to incinerate that waste, to landfill that waste, and to import some recycled PET from elsewhere. By doing that, by the way, we are importing as well CO2, and we are also importing unemployment. Right? So there is a consequence on not only the PET, but also employment, wealth, CO2. As a matter of fact, we've done a study at Eastman where we've identified that if Europe is massively relying on imports, the carbon footprint in Europe for integrating recycled PET coming from abroad is the same carbon footprint than if you are using virgin. So the reality shows today that if we continue like that, we are going completely to miss the objective. The objective at the beginning was to recycle our waste, our own waste, and to reduce our carbon footprint. At the end, we might, despite all the good intention, we might be in a situation where we are not going to recycle it, we are going to incinerate it, we are going to landfill it, and the carbon footprint will be the same that if we are using virgin. Isn't it crazy? So something is not working. So let me try to share with you what is my conviction and what should take place in order to really create a circular economy. The few first bullets here, I would say some evidence, but let's go through that quickly. First, you need to make sure that the product that you are producing, the recycled product, meet the specification of the customers. There is a question of quality. You need to make sure that the quality is there, because the customers are not going to lower their expectation in terms of quality because they are buying a recycled materials. So quality is an evidence. The second one maybe is less of an evidence, because there are two types of circular economy. There are some circular economy where your recycled product is less expensive than your virgin product. In that case, the dynamics of the market, the economics of the market are quite different. In our case, I think everybody will recognize here, if it's not the case, maybe somebody has a wonderful technology, but I think that for 99% of the people, you would recognize that recycled PET is more expensive than virgin PET. So we need to accept that. We need to accept that all along the value chain, from the customer, the customers of the customers, everybody who is on the value chain. The third subject is the third condition that needs to be there in order to have a circular economy, is to also to make sure that you have a robust supply chain. Because to some extent, your customer is becoming your supplier is becoming your customer. So creating a circular economy is in reality a complete change in the way you do business in an area. And it takes time, we know that, to develop a solid and robust value chain which can support circular economy. This is a condition that needs to happen in order to be able to create a true circular economy. So, next one, a clear regulatory framework. I think it is absolutely critical today that EU continue its work to define a clear regulatory framework on what is it that we are talking about when we want to create circular economy? What do we want really to achieve when we want to do the when we want to enforce the PPWR? I'll give you some examples. The only thing that we're asking, basically, at Eastman, is to have a level playing field. We are happy about competition. You know, competition is making us better, but we want a level playing field. We want to make sure, for instance, that, you know, the product against that we are in competition with, they are facing the same rules. I'll just give you 3 examples. Example number 1, we want to make sure that the way the collect is done is the same, and the constraints that they are on the collect is the same, separate collection, for instance. We also want to make sure that in the country of origin, there is also some targets in terms of free incorporation of recycled PET, of recycled materials. We believe that we can create a level playing field if the country of origin from this PET has the same objective in terms of reintegration of this recycled material, recycled PET. And third, which is probably the most important one, we want to make sure that the country of origin accepts the type of application that this PET will be used for in Europe. Today we are importing a lot of PET from countries where they don't allow this PET to be used in the application that we are using right now in Europe. Is that normal? I don't think so. So I think we should really pay attention to that and make sure that we have clear rules, level playing field, same rules in order to be competitive. And that's very important for a circular economy. Otherwise, we create an unbalanced situation. And because of that, we can't treat the waste, you know, locally. It's true in Europe, but it's true in any places. And by the way, you know, I know that here there are lots of people coming from outside Europe. I would have exactly the same speech if I were in your country, if I were in your region, because I don't think that we can have any circular economy if this circular economy does not have a local dimension, does not take into account the fact that it has to have some proximity. Otherwise, you are destroying the local economy, and you don't create the foundation to have a true, sustainable circular economy. Otherwise, basically, you are not fighting against another circular economy. You are fighting against a linear economy. And we know that we can't be competitive against a linear economy because we are bearing the cost of all the circularity, the collection, the sortation, the recycling, everything. So, my conclusion. We are here in the Netherlands, and I don't know if you are familiar about the Flemish Renaissance, but maybe I'll speak more about the Italian Renaissance. I read a book a few years ago, fascinating about the Italian Renaissance, but I think it's the same for the, I would say, the Renaissance that took place here in the Netherlands. And the author of this book explained how and why, actually, the Italian Renaissance happened at that time, at that place in the history. What has happened? So a game change, a system change has happened in Italy at that time. And the theory of the author is to say you need 3 conditions to really have a system change. The first one is that you need to be able to look at the cold facts. You need to stop the wishful thinking. I think we are here right now in Europe. Circular economy does not work. You know, just open the news, you will see there are too many closures of companies. It does not work right now. There is a good desire to do that. There is I would say a true willingness to put that in place, but today it does not work. That is the hard, cold fact that we need to look into. First condition, look at the cold fact. The second condition you need to have in order to create a game change is to be able to welcome people who are thinking differently from you. And I think this is, this show is a good example of bringing so many people who have different opinion and thinking differently. So I think we are there in Europe because we try every year, all the time, to bring all those ideas to try to really confront each other. So we have this condition. So first one, look at the cold facts. Second one, being able to bring people who are thinking different than you. The third one, a sense of urgency. If you don't have the sense of urgency, nothing is moving. We can say that for the climate change, by the way. If you apply the 3 rules to climate change, we will better understand why it is moving so slowly, or to some extent why it's not moving. And my conclusion is to say here, I really hope that right now we have here in Europe, here in this show, a sense of urgency that we really need to put in place a true circular economy where we treat first the local waste before we welcome waste coming from somewhere else. Thank you very much. So we have time for questions, I think. You need to scan the QR code here in order to be able to go on the apps and being able to ask for your question. And I should have the question coming here and there. Does not work? No questions? Yes.
You said at some moment that circular economy is more expensive than linear. I guess that's because also the linear economy is not yet paying for damages of the linear economy. So solutions in that area, penalization, do you see those being sufficient in driving the transition?
Very good question. That's the key question. Are we willing to pay? And when I say we, it's us as individual, it's the brands. Are we willing to pay the true cost of circularity? The true cost of what is the cost of a material that we are using in packaging or anything? Probably not. And this is why today we have this unbalanced situation between a linear economy and a circular economy. So, because to be true, if we really want to be circular, we should have embedded into the price of the goods when we are buying them, first an eco-design, which make it recyclable. We've talked about that this morning in many conferences, but also to have the cost embedded inside the cost of the products, so we are sure we can recycle it. And we are not there yet, that's true. But just to develop a bit on that, when we are having those debates with so many players in the industry, quite often the question comes and the question is to say, hey, but that's true, but if we really put the cost of circularity inside the product, then it might create two things. Inflation on one hand, and on the other hand, it might create a trend for some, I would say, local companies, in our case, European companies, to go away from Europe and to produce elsewhere. Okay, but that's the challenge of the circular economy we're facing. Do we really want circular economy or not? Or do we want to keep having piles of waste, of plastic going to incineration of landfill? I think what we have to realize individually as company is that circular economy comes at a cost. I think that if we don't start the discussion and the debate by that, I think it's difficult to progress. Yes, there is a cost. There is a cost. Should work. So the first question is, how long do we think that the green premium for recycled PET will remain for? Back to the question, I think that recycled PET will always have a premium compared to virgin. I mean, for me, that's an entry point, because it takes more resources, it takes more money to recycle PET than it takes to produce virgin. So I think there is always this cost that will be there. There is a cost of recycling. So I don't know if I'm answering right the question, but I think it's important. Question about our project, Eastman project in France. So we have a project which is considered to be right now shovel ready. We have shovel in hands and ready to break ground. We have done all the engineering work, everything is ready. And as I would say, has several players in the industry right now, we are waiting for clarification of what is going to become the regulation. And I think that, not only investors are doing that, but also probably some brands are doing that as well. And what is it that we are waiting for? We are waiting for, what is going to be in reality the SUPD phase 2, which is right now in active discussions. What are going to be the PPWR mirror clause? And the objective of those mirror clause is to try to create a level playing field among all players in Europe and elsewhere. Third subject that was presented by the EU Commission in February, I think. What is going to be into the Circular Economy Act? By the end of 2026, the Commission told us we will put in place a Circular Economy Act. We need to see what's going to be inside and to see if there is really the desire, the willingness to put in the regulation the fact that we want to create a circular economy in Europe. So this is what we are waiting for. Well, there is a good question also about how do we realistically ensure level playing field. It's very difficult to have a perfect level playing field across the planet, right? So me, what I like to do is that I like to take the question into the other direction. Because yes, it can be a endless debate to define what is a level playing field. What I think makes more sense, and here that's the citizen who is speaking. That's the simple citizen who is speaking, the guy who's tried to have a little bit of common sense. What I want is to be able first to treat the waste that we are generating before we treat the waste which is coming from elsewhere. For me, common sense consists in saying, I am, as a person, as a village, as a city, as a country, I am producing a waste. I want to produce a circular economy, so I need to make sure this is my responsibility and my accountability that I'm going to recycle this waste. If I do that, if I need more plastic or recycle plastic after that, that's fine to bring it from from other places. But I want morally, ethically first to make sure that I'm treating my own waste. Otherwise, it's not circular economy. If at the end, the subject is to say, hey, I'm going to landfill my waste, I'm going to incinerate my waste, because it's cheaper to buy the waste coming from 10,000 kilometers, for me, it's total nonsense. It might be economical rational. It is ethical nonsense. And this is the challenge we are facing as individuals, as companies. One question here is about, how do I engage with customer, how to engage with the value chain. It's a very important question. Actually, last week I was having a lunch with a partner, and he introduced me the concept of co-opetition, right? It's the combination of collaboration and competition. And I like this concept because I think that every one of us who is trying to make this circular economy works, we realize that we need to team up. We need to look at this economy at a different way. We can't use the same tool that we are using for the linear economy and to use them for the circular economy. It does not work. And it's true for the way we are dealing with our suppliers. It is true for the way we are dealing with our customer. And I think that this is a very important point. We need to find ways to address that challenge, not, I would say, in sequence, not one after the other in the value chain. We need to look at it globally and to make sure we can create some consortium, some alliances in order to make it happen. This is the concept of co-opetition. Do I have time for more questions? I can see you are approaching step by step. I feel that, one more, one more. Let's finish by this question. Do you think European Commission should have more sense of urgency to make the industry more profitable prior to implementing regulation? I think the EU Commission has a tremendous responsibility. We do have as well as economical player as well to work with them in order to create the condition to make real this circular economy. By the way, when we look at what's going on we like a little bit in Europe, especially I would say in France, to bang a little bit on the EU Commission. But in reality, the work which is done is a fantastic work. You don't see that, in any other big economical space in the world. Here we have a place where we say, hey, we want to be accountable for the future and to try to create this circular economy. What we realize as we do that is that it is very challenging. Sometimes we are exploring some pathway and we realize that those pathway could be counterproductive. I think as we are working all together, we need to find a way to back off, and find new ways which are really productive. So yes, definitely, the EU has a big role to play. And by the way, I think that we can all recognize that due to the recent, I would say, geopolitical events, actually personally, I've felt in the way the EU Commission is speaking to companies, is speaking about the economy, that this sense of urgency that I was talking about into this Italian Renaissance is now there. I really feel that at the EU Commission, they now know and understand that something has to happen to really create a circular economy in Europe. Thank you very much.
We have a huge opportunity in front of us to not waste so much resource and carbon.
This commercial scale prove out of this technology, it's enabling a whole new stream of recycling.
We are revolutionizing recycling because we are taking things back to the molecular level.
We're targeting the hard-to-recycle waste. With new processes, waste can be seen as raw material with value. We're showing the world that we can do it.